No. It's just the Wi-Fi. I don't know why the. I realize. All right, there we go. We are back in business. Oh, you're good. I was just for some reason the Wi-Fi wasn't working. What's up? Okay, got it. Understood. Okay. Okay. We're good. I'm just playing around. Let's see. I'm checking the same thing. This thing is loading super slow. Okay. We are in business. All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Welcome back. Hope you got plenty of pizza and some soda. And I hope you don't fall asleep. So I'm going to keep this as brief and as short as possible in order to facilitate no falling asleep during the presentation. Now, we ended our last session with the question, what do you want people to say at your funeral? When I was 16 years old, I remember talking to my dad, and we were having a conflict about a decision that I had made. And my dad said, look, you don't care about, what people think about you. You don't care about, how people are going to look at you in the future. I said, no, I don't care how people think. I don't care about them. I'm like, people are going to talk. People are going to think what they're going to think. So I'm just going to do what I want to do, and they'll just have to deal with it. And at first, that was my attitude. But about a year later, this behavior and attitude came back to bite me. And as it came back to bite me, the immediate result was the fact that I realized that it did matter to me exactly how people viewed me. That it actually made a huge difference what my reputation was. And my father then pulled me aside because he realized I was actually in a teachable place. I was actually ready to listen to him at that point in time. And he said, Sebastian, you must keep in mind that when people hear your name, Sebastien Braxton, you decide what comes to their minds when they hear your name. You decide what they hear by the way you live your life. You decide what comes to their minds by what you say to them, how you speak. You decide by what you don't say just the same. So when you think about your name and what you want to come into the minds of men and women at any point in time in the world, after you lived, you decide today what they will be thinking about tomorrow. And so I recall an experience that I had, what I call the tale of two trees. It's very short and simple and to the point. You see, about 5-6 years ago, I got an invitation to speak in Jamaica. And as I was invited to speak at the Mona campus, where there is the School of Nursing and Technology, and it was a campus ministry reunion from the 1980s. I mean, they had people who were presidents of the campus ministry group for, I think, back in 1979, before I was even born. And then you had people who were actually the current president of the group. And as I was invited there to speak, the host, when he brought me there, he said, Sebastian, my understanding is that you're half Jamaican. I said, yes, my mother is Jamaican. She was born in Halfway Tree in Kingston. He says, really? He said, yeah, I had no idea. And he said, do you know how many young people listen to you? They listen to your presentations, and they're so excited to find out that you're actually from Jamaica. And I said, no, I was not aware. I have no way of knowing, and I'm very, very careful to guard myself against getting too puffed up. So he said, well, I want to take you to a specific place. So as we drove on the campus, he decided to keep driving past the building where I was giving my presentations, and he took me to this tree. And when we got there, you could tell this tree was something significant because there was a metal plate with some information about that tree. So when we arrived, he said, Sebastian, I know that you're not always aware of those who may be impacted by your life. But he said, I thought this might be something that would mean a lot to you. So I decided to bring you to this tree. So he said, I want you to sit down. And there was a little bench right there by the tree. So I sat down on the bench, and this was a huge tree. It's clearly very old. I couldn't even wrap my arms around the trunk of the tree. And he said, Sebastian, this tree is the place that when they would bring slaves from Africa, they would chain them to this tree. And you could see the marks and the bark that was missing from the tree. From the fact that these slaves, while they were tied to that tree, they would try to break free. But the tree was too strong. And so they would wait there to be sold to whoever they were going to be sold to on whatever plantations. And he said, Sebastian, I want you to just sit here for a moment and think about the fact of those who also sat by this same tree, who were Jamaican. And as they sat by this tree was their bondage. It was the reason why they couldn't read. It was the reason why they couldn't go to school. It was a reminder of the fact that people viewed them as property and less than people. And after he said that, he just walked away and went to the car, and he left me there contemplating. And as I looked at that tree, as I touched the tree, I recall immediately being struck in my mind. It was hard for me to actually keep the tears out of my eyes, because the thing kept impacting me that, Sebastian, the very privileges that I have to go to school, there was some young Jamaican kid tied to this tree who couldn't go to school. And yet I waste so much time trying to get out of doing homework and trying to excel academically. There was also so many individuals in there who were hoping just to be able to marry their wife, not being threatened by the fact that some owner could come in and sleep with your wife at will, or that your wife might be sold to someone, to some place that you would never see her again. And yet I had the privilege not to have that experience. And so as I walked back from that tree, it reminded me of something that I realized I had learned at a young age, but I had forgotten. And that was the message that, Sebastian, the best way to thank those who have come before you, the best way to thank those who have suffered and sacrificed and bore the burden of circumstances so that you could have the freedom and the liberties that you have, is to do something significant with your life. It makes no sense for them to fight for certain liberties, fight for certain freedoms, only for me to waste them in indulgence. So therefore, I walked away from that tree. I got back in the car, and he said, I hope, Sebastian, that this experience was meaningful to you. Because he says there are so many young Jamaican boys and young Jamaican girls who are now aspiring to be speakers because they heard you and they found out that you were also half Jamaican. And when they see you up there, they think to themselves, well, because he's half Jamaican, therefore I could also do this because I'm a full Jamaican. And they said to themselves, this guy's only half Jamaican. And it reminds me of the importance of saying, I need to go as high and as far as fast as I can possibly go. Because every time I think about giving up, every time I think about half-stepping in something that I do, I take my mind back to that tree. Remind yourself. Remember those who have come before you. And the best way to thank those whose shoulders you have stood upon to become the person that you have become is to do something significant with your life. Now, this experience of this tree also reminds us of an experience that the author of the book of Hebrews in the New Testament speaks of. He writes these words. He says, "Therefore we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us." In verse 2 is where I want to focus in my energy. He says, "Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God." I want you to notice the emphasis that he puts here. He says that Jesus is the person that he is encouraging his audience to look to. And the reason why he wants them to look to Jesus is because he says there's some attribute, there was some attitude, there was some approach in Jesus' mind that I want you to emulate. Now, there's no person on the earth that has not been inspired in some way, form, or fashion by the life or the teachings of Jesus. Any book that you buy on the greatest speeches of human history will always have the Sermon on the Mount. I know because I own several of those books. I love speeches, and I want to read and learn from great orators, but every single book I've ever purchased always includes the Sermon on the Mount by Jesus. The writer of the book of Hebrews, he says there's this mindset of Jesus was that there was a joy that was set before him. There was a reward that he wanted to receive, and it was because of this reward he endured the cross. You know how many times before I was a Christian, before I decided to join the faith of Christianity, I heard about the story of the cross. And I recall being in school in Georgia, and these kids, you know, down south is called the Bible Belt. Almost everybody is a Christian, but I was not a Christian. And while I was there, people would come to me and say, "Oh, Sebastian, are you saved?" I'm like, "From what?" Then they come to me and say, "Hey, Sebastian, you know Jesus died for you." I'm like, "That's nice. I never asked him to do that. Why would he do that?" And they said, "Well, you don't understand. You're in sin and this and that and the third." And I'm like, "What do you mean you're a person is in sin?" They're like, "Well, think about it. Do you lie? Do you steal? Do you commit adultery?" And I'm like, "Do you not?" So I'm like, if you're saved from sin, but you seem to still be in sin. So what did he save you from exactly? So I would get into these debates and arguments with Christians. And as we got into these debates back and forth when I was not a person of faith, they never ever explained to me the point that I'm going to make right now. And that was the point that the cross was not a joy for Jesus. The Bible does not say for the joy of the cross. It says no, for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross. The cross was not something that Jesus necessarily wanted. Any person who's ever read the New Testament knows about the story of Gethsemane. Any person who's ever read about the story of Christ knows about the experience of Jesus sweating great drops of blood as he was approaching the time of crucifixion. And in Jesus' mind, he came to God and he said, "If it be possible, let this pass from me." That tells you and me that not only according to Hebrews, but according to the most historical account of what took place on the eve of his death, Jesus prayed that it would not happen to him. He did not want the cross, but Hebrews says he endured the cross. You know what that tells you and me? Is that Jesus endured the cross because he had found something that he was willing to be betrayed to achieve. He had found something that he was willing to be spit upon to achieve. He had found something that he was willing to be crucified in order to achieve. There was a joy that was set before him. And it bids us to ask ourselves a reflective question tonight. What is the joy that could be set before you? What is the element of wonder that we have lost in our lives, that if this thing would happen, we would say, you know what, I can die if I ever accomplish this thing. If I ever achieved this particular change in the world, if I was able to impact the world in this specific capacity, you could just take my life. My age would not matter. Whether I was single or married would not matter. Just if this thing could be done. And Jesus had found something that he was willing to spit upon to be achieved. So when you go back, just as I go back to my tree in Jamaica, when you go back to the second tree, which is the tree where Jesus was crucified, you find there that Jesus, again, the Bible says that he was God and man. He was half Jamaican. And now you're saying to yourself, if he, who is 100% human, absolutely, but he's also 100% God, in his nature, he shares something with you and I, just like those Jamaican kids share with me. And they say, because of what Sebastien is doing, because of the things that he is accomplishing, it inspires them that it is actually possible. I remember when Hillary Clinton officially declared her desire to run for the presidency, and when she got the Democratic nomination, that there was a picture posted on Twitter of her giving a young African girl a high five. And the caption on the photo was talking about the fact that this is Hillary Clinton letting a young girl know, and young girls all over the world, don't ever let anyone tell you that something isn't possible. Because now if Hillary Clinton can become the president of the United States, every woman can then say to herself, why not me? Why could I not accomplish this thing? Because when they see someone who is similar to them accomplishing great things, it inspires them that I myself can also accomplish great things. Looking unto Jesus, who for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross. The question for you and me is, have we found a joy that we are willing to endure crucifixion, betrayal, being misunderstood, being forsaken by our closest friends in order to achieve? For Christ, it was to see a life changed. For Christ, it was to see lives eternally saved in what he called paradise. That is what Jesus had a joy that helped him to endure the cross. I hope that this presentation has built within every single one of us the basic desire that we should want it to matter that we lived. We must not engage in work for work's sake. We must not engage in school for school's sake. We must not engage in religion for religion's sake. We must engage in something for the sake of a greater purpose. This is what helps us to endure. It was Friedrich Nietzsche who made the statement, if you know why, you can bear anyhow. If you know why, you can bear anyhow. It doesn't matter the means, because you know why you're doing it. I learned that as a father. Because if I know why I'm waking up at 2 a.m. is so that my child doesn't starve, I will get up at 2 a.m. But if I don't know why I'm being woken up at 2 a.m., like when I was in the United States Marine Corps, and they just wake you up at 2 a.m. for no reason, you cannot bear it. This is unbearable because you don't know why. But when you know why, you understand why you are enduring what you are enduring. So my challenge to each and every single one of us is not just to live, but to live in such a way that we have a holy ambition. the same ambition that Jesus had, that he wanted the world to be better because he had lived inside of it. If we embrace that ambition and we go forward to say, I will spare no pains to accomplish this thing. And Thursday night's presentation, when we address the issue of success, we will get even more specific in what we can do to actually accomplish these things. But the ultimate point that cannot be denied is that students on this university, they crave the desire to want it to matter that they lived. And if we are to learn anything from the life of Jesus, the greatest fulfillment of that desire to want it to matter that you lived is for the joy of changing another human life. To be an agent of transformation in someone else's life. To live not only for God, but to live for men. To bring the greatest blessing upon them. Tonight, you should have received a card when you registered. You guys have that card with you. As I end this presentation tonight, I want to ask you to fill out that card. And the purpose of that card, if you don't have a card, just raise your hand. We can make sure you get one. Just raise your hand high. We can give you a card. So we have a couple hands here, another hand over there. And I just want you to fill out this card as honest as possible. I'm a person that always is willing to embrace feedback. And I believe over-communication is better. And so as you fill out this card, I just want you to answer those questions for us. And then you can leave those cards right there at the end of your table. I want to thank you guys for coming out tonight. Really appreciate your time. I know we started late, and we're going to do our utmost to stay on time tomorrow. Tomorrow night, we will be dealing with the craving for love and relationships. So I hope to see you there. Same place, 7 p.m., same time. And, of course, we'll be having some more pizza. So we hope that you can make it. God bless you, and thank you so much for coming out.